Guantanamo has been an enormous recruitment tool for organizations like ISIL.
When candidates say we wouldn't admit 3-year-old orphans, that's political posturing. I cannot think of a more potent recruitment tool for ISIL.
The president says GOP rhetoric and the fact that Guantanamo Bay is open are two facts. So one fact, one entity that helps ISIS recruits. Our political panel with me now, Democratic strategist Julie Roginski, Catherine Timpf, National Review reporter. Both are Fox News contributors. Julie, first of all, to the GOP rhetoric, is this true? Are we seeing ISIS would-be terrorists cutting sound bites from our politicians and putting them in recruiting videos?
Well, I don't know about that. I luckily am not in the business of looking at ISIS recruiting videos, but I will say when you have people like Governor Christie of New Jersey saying that we won't accept 3-year-old orphans for whatever reason, what does that say to the Muslim world? That says that we're discriminating against them, not because they're potential terrorists, not because we're afraid of our national security, but simply because of where they come from and what their religion is. What message does that send to the larger Muslim community? What does that send to our allies, Jordan, places like Saudi Arabia, places like Turkey, people that we're trying to work with across the Arab world? When we say that 3-year-old orphans are not accepted here in this country for whatever reason Governor Christie deems, I think it's reprehensible. He calls himself a pro-life governor. That is the most anti-life position I've ever heard in my life. And I think it's disgusting.
Catherine, let me ask you, do you think this is part of the ISIS strategy? We've spoken with people at Brookings who say if moderate Muslims feel isolated by the U.S. and its policies, they are more likely to understand ISIS's mission and eventually contribute to their cause. Do you agree?
No. If you support ISIS or feel sympathetic to their cause, there is something wrong with you beyond what any GOP governor or politician could have said. And I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the rhetoric that I see coming from the GOP right now regarding the refugees. However, for Obama to go so far as to blame the people supporting ISIS on anyone's rhetoric is ridiculous. If you are a terrorist, you're a bad, evil, horrible person. And if someone's words can convince you to be a terrorist, you're probably always a bad, horrible, evil person.
Yeah, I was going to say, or at least, at the very least, extremely vulnerable mentally. I agree with you, Kat, on that point. I want to bring you some news that my colleague Peter Barnes just sent us from D.C. Comey saying of the 900 ISIS targets being investigated by the FBI, so this is obviously from the FBI Director Comey, dozens are under intense scrutiny. As far as our position, Julie, as far as what you have heard from our president, from our Congress, what is the next best step forward?
Well, are you asking in terms of refugees or in terms of...
in terms of general policy.
Look, general policy is I feel strongly that we need to admit these refugees. These are people who are fleeing genocide, and they need to be able to come here after 18 to 24 months of vast scrutiny, which is what we're undertaking, 13 data points before they can even set foot here. And secondly, we need to figure out a holistic way to address ISIS. I unfortunately think there is not much more to do in terms of bombing them from the air. You're going to probably kill some people, but you're not going to eradicate the problem. This needs to be looked at holistically. This needs to be looked at not just in the Middle East, but as to what Europe is doing as well with their Muslim communities and in terms of the alienation their Muslim communities are facing, which is why so many of these terrorists are European nationals, and the Americans are not for the most part, but the French and the Belgians certainly were in this most recent horrific attack. We need to look inward as well as outward to see where we can address these issues. It's not just about bombing people. And we need to look at a military strategy. This country does not have the appetite for a mass invasion of 5 or 6 countries, but the reality is that is what it might take to defeat this ISIS threat for good.
And as many people point out, ISIS apparently has close to 30,000 members. Yeah. The Western world, the peaceful world united, can probably take them on. Julie Roginski, thank you. Kat Timpf, we will see you too shortly. ISIS is now saying it has executed 2 hostages.